5:30 p.m. I'm going to call the meeting to order. If we could please have staff do a roll call.
Commissioner Brewer,
Here.
Commissioner McDaniel,
Here.
Commissioner McCowan. Here. Commissioner Jablonski.
Here.
Commissioner Byrd,
Here.
Commissioner McClure, Commissioner Griffith.
Here.
Commissioner Kindle, and Commissioner Parker.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Starting with our consent items, item number 1, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of the minutes as follows. Planning Commission meeting minutes of July 11th, 2024. Item number 2, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of PP-2425-2, consideration of a preliminary plat submitted by Summit Lakes LLC for Summit Lakes Addition, Summit Lakes Villas, a planned unit development for approximately 6.46 acres of property generally located south of Alameda Street and east of 24th Avenue Southeast. And item number 3, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of PP-2425-1, consideration of a preliminary plat submitted by Size LLC for Brookhaven number 45 Edition, previously known as Brookhaven number 41 Edition, for approximately 7.96 acres of property generally located approximately 1/4 of a mile south of West Rock Creek Road of the west side of Brookhaven Boulevard. Does any member of the commission wish to remove any item from the consent docket? Seeing none, does any member of the audience wish to remove any item from the consent docket? Seeing none, I would take a motion by commission.
Move to approve.
Second.
And a vote.
You may vote. All votes have been cast, and it carries 7-0.
Okay, moving to our non-consent items, reading items number 4, 5, and 6 together. Item number 4, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of Resolution R-14, a resolution of the Council of the City of Norman, Oklahoma, amending the Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan so as to remove part of the Section 35, Township 9 North, Range 3 West of the Indian Meridian to Norman, Cleveland County, Oklahoma, from the commercial designation, open space designation, high-density residential designation, and low-density residential designation, and place the same in mixed-use designation, generally located south of the West Main Street, west of Ed Noble Parkway, north of West Lindsay Street, and east of 36th Avenue Southwest. Item number 5, consideration of adoption, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance O-2425-3, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Norman, Oklahoma, amending section 36-201 of the Code of the City of Norman so as to remove section 35, Township 9 North, Range 3 West of the Indian Meridian to Norman, Cleveland County, Oklahoma, from the C2 General Commercial District, RM6 Medium Density Apartment District with permissive use for a golf course, PL Parkland District and PUD Planned Unit Development District, and place the same in the PUD Planned Unit Development District and providing for the severability thereof, generally located south of the west of Main Street, west of Ed Noble Parkway, north of West Lindsay Street, and east of 36th Avenue Southwest. And item number 6, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of PP-2425-3, consideration of a preliminary plat submitted by Bob Moore Farms North LLC for Bob Moore Farms North, a planned unit development for approximately 55.56 acres of property generally located approximately 1/4 mile south of West Main Street on the east side of 36th Avenue Southwest. And I'll take the staff presentation.
Planning Department. I won't reread everything that Commissioner Byrd just read, but this is a 2025 plan amendment and a rezoning and preliminary plat application. They are requesting to have commercial more uses on the northern end, and then apartments with some mixed use on the southern end, which I'll show on the site plan. So they're requesting mixed use for their 2025. And then they have a mix of zoning on the site as it is now, and they're requesting to have one PUD to govern the entire property. Most of the property is currently vacant, or I guess it all is. There's some residential to the south and to the west, and then commercial to the north and east. Here's an aerial showing the property. And then this is Willow Bend and 36 looking west. 36th Avenue looking west. This would match up with their northern access point. 36th Avenue looking toward Ed Noble. So Sam's would kind of be up on the left side there. Willow Bend Road looking north towards Sam's Club. Willow Bend Road looking south. Willow Bend looking northwest, so Sam's and the library are on the right side. And then Willow Bend looking towards Ed Noble Parkway, so I think it's like Barnes and Noble that's there right in the middle. Here's their preliminary plat, which is separated into 2 sheets because of the shape of the property. Then our site plan. So here's kind of a rendering of their conceptual site plan. A closer view. So the red buildings would be the proposed commercial, and then the yellow buildings would be the multifamily. And then our protest map shows a 0.3% protest within the notification area. And the applicant is here with the presentation, and I'm available for questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions by commission for staff? And just a reminder to press the request to speak button. Commissioner Jablonski?
Yeah, I've got some questions. So it looks like part of this new proposed PUD overlaps an existing PUD. Can you tell me what that PUD says? Is it, does it look like R1 density or is it higher density?
It was R1 density and open space for the development to the south. So you can kind of tell it even here on, well, I guess you can't see my cursor, but the development on the south of Willow Bend and then the kind of like wedge-shaped property were part of that PUD.
Okay, thank you. 2 other questions for you. One, it looks like, there's a proposal to add a road and then add a connection from a parking lot to Willow Bend. What kind of traffic increase would this be on Willow Bend?
I think our traffic engineer is saying that the applicant could address that.
Okay, great. And then my last question, in the details of the PUD, I think I saw 2 different numbers. In one spot, it looked like it was saying 26% for the open space, and then in another spot, it was trying to say can go down to 10%. So I was a little bit confused because the PUD is supposed to lock in the zoning, and what's there, that becomes the zoning. So if we voted to approve this, what would we actually be voting for? 26% or can go down to 10%?
So they would be tied to this site plan, which shows the 26.
Okay,
But there are allowances to change their coverage, and there's an administrative section in the PUD
Sure.
ordinance. So they could go down. I'm not sure it could go down to 10, but they could say what their plans are too.
great, thank you.
Any other questions by commission for staff? Okay, seeing none, I would take the applicant presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Gunnar Joyce, and then we've got a full project team here on behalf of the developer, so we'll introduce them. Dee Greninger is with the ownership group, and then Andy Wilkinson and Sophia Andal are with PMA, Project Management Advisors. They really did a lot of the heavy lifting on the master plan that we'll walk through, so that's introducing that set. BJ Hawkins with the traffic, and we'll probably directly address your questions associated with the development, and then the SRB team with the civil engineering on the site. And so, and of course, the people that do all the hard work, Libby Smith, who wrote all the documents, and Sean Rieger oversaw all the work, and I get the hard part talking to you guys. So This is the location of the site. We are south of Main Street and east of 36th Avenue. I show you the whole context because I know at the beginning when we did pre-development, there was kind of a confusion about the area of land that was included. It is just 55 acres to the north of Willow Bend, so nothing south of Willow Bend is included. That line is a little messed up, but we are not going south of Willow Bend, and you'll see it on the next slide, but that is the specific call out, so nothing all the way down to where Lindsay starts to connect to 36. We are very far north of that, so just getting oriented on the site. There's the 55.5 acres. And you can see it there highlighted in yellow on both sides. So again, nothing south of Willow Bend. We stay on the northern side of Willow Bend. This shows the existing zoning and the existing 2025. So we'll talk a little bit about the changes that we're requesting tonight. But as you can see, it is a very intensive site in the current entitlements. And so overall, a theme tonight will be that this is a down zoning. This is a less intense project than what's currently entitled. And the PUD documents there, Commissioner DeBonsi, that you called out, Laura is correct, south of Willow Bend, so off-site is R1 neighborhood. To the north is actually a very heavy commercial allowance. And I texted, and I apologize, Ms. Hudson, I was trying to get a slide in tonight to show that site plan because it is large box stores and it's huge parking lots. It's a 1997 layout, so you can imagine there's no trees, there's no pervious surface, but it is an engineered document. It's not one of the pretty architectural ones that you'll see here in a couple slides. So it just looks like black ink on the page, and I couldn't get it to where we could make heads or tails of it. But the allowance north of Willow Bend is a substantially heavy, big box commercial development. And that is also everything in red. C2 allowance is as intense commercial as you can do in Norman. So this site north of Willow Bend, which we're talking about, is a very ripe for intense commercial development site. This developer is coming with a very community-friendly master plan, and I'm excited to talk about the details of that. Also, the 2025 designation complies with that current zoning. It has open space. There is open space areas throughout that we will retain. We have a very large open space border along the eastern edge of our property. Our proposal is to make this site mixed use in the comp plan, but as we talk about it, the 2025 designation is really outdated, and so yes, we're proposing an update to the 2025 plan because it's required under your current code, but I'm going to show you a slide about the AIM update that we are going through as a community right now and how this proposal will really assist and achieve some goals that we're talking about in our current update to the comp plan. So here's a summary of the request. The first bullet point there, again, overall theme, very substantial down zoning, very less intense than what's entitled. It is a very good, thoughtful, laid out approach where we have buffered the residential neighbors on the south. As you can see, we'll start in the south with those blue buildings. That's a concession that the ownership group has made through feedback we received in the pre-development meetings and moving forward. Everything on the site was originally requested to be 6 stories residential. That blue zone is now a height limit area that's shown on the site plan, and it is restricted to 3 stories. So it has been cut in half from the developer's original request, a big concession that has been made. Everything else in yellow is the multifamily 6-story project. And then as we move north to the red buildings, that is the development area that is really the commercial aspect of the project. As you can see, as we move from the residences up to the Sams and the existing commercial, we have really buffered and layered the intensity of use to where it's the smallest product to multifamily to the most intense commercial, being thoughtful to the traffic on Willow Bend, the neighbor on Willow Bend, and forcing all of our intensity up north, losing intensity as we move into the neighborhood. It's been programmed through PMA's hard work, through the ownership's hard work for over 12 months into not what is the maximum best use under the current entitlement, but what does the community really need? And you could see already current zoning entitlements are substantial commercial development, and this is less intense, and it meets housing need that Norman has. We'll get on some of those slides and some of those numbers, but really that is why you are looking at a residential project in bulk and not a commercial project in bulk. There are many amenity areas sprinkled throughout the site. The farthest to the northeast, to the northwest, is a private park shown up there. There are many other clubhouses and pocket park areas for the residences that'll live in this community. And then you can start to see that open space, that stormwater retention pond along the eastern boundary. And you can also see walking trails there. That is intentional, that is designed to be an amenity for the site, and so that that natural area will be retained. It'll be utilized both as stormwater infrastructure and also an amenity, and it'll be connected through, the sidewalks and the walking trails throughout the site. So it's a very pedestrian-friendly, it's a very connected, walkable site plan that the ownership group has worked really hard on. Here are the details of the actual engineering documents. So this is the preliminary site plan, and as you can see, you get the first look. We don't have a zoomed out version that shows this detail for the southernmost second retention pond, but you can see it now all the way at the bottom of the page. And really the stormwater layout is a series of lakes to where water will flow down. It'll be retained in the top one, move down to the bottom one and be retained. Right now, that southern one is existing on site. In the detention report that was done with the preliminary plat, it's noted that's currently not in compliance with Norman's stormwater regulations, and so this plan will bring it into compliance. It will improve stormwater conditions that exist on site, and it also goes above and beyond and will meet the needs of this development as well. So it has been designed to be sort of a regional detention area for existing uses, as well as the added stormwater impact of this development. And then the preliminary plat, the other documents you'll vote on, as you can see, the lots to the north, those are the commercially planned lots. To the south, where we have apartments, there's just two very large lots. You see common area A is that open space, that first stormwater retention pond. We go to the south farther, common area B, second retention pond. Just to the left there, you'll see kind of an exhibit. In the PUD document, we have two different development areas, and so this is what this map is for. The red is development area 1. That is the more intense commercial allowance, and then as we move to the south, that's development area 2 that has the multifamily residential component. And then the open space, as you can see, runs the length of the southeast boundary. So traffic, that's been some comments that we have received, and it's been looked at substantially through the project team and with the help of both TEC, BJ, and also David Riesland and the city. The traffic in this, I'll have BJ talk about it, I believe, after we wrap this up and open it into questions. But to summarize, BJ had looked at what this development's impact would be compared to what has always been planned for this area. So that is a full shopping retail development. Right now, his traffic report expects roughly 5,000 cars a day from our proposal. A development of a full shopping commercial center would be around 15,000. So we're a third of the impact than what this site is currently entitled for. That is, again, to the credit of the owner coming in and not trying to maximize what the site could be used for, but offer a product type that fits with the site and fits with the community needs. Because of that substantial downgrade from intensity, both BJ's report and the city note that there is not negative traffic impacts. The infrastructure here has been always contemplated for a heavy commercial use. BJ's recommendation is 8.2. That's a snippet from his report that shows that no traffic control or roadway improvements are needed for traffic to continue operating at acceptable levels both now and for many years in the future. The city has done that same review of BJ's work, and I've called out, as you can see, that highlighted piece comes from the staff report. They recommend approval, and that last line is capacity exceeds demand in this area. As such, additional offsite improvements are not anticipated. So this site has been designed in accordance with the city's adopted standards. The EDC, the preliminary plat process, reviews all the proposed roadways, traffic capacity, where those cars are going to go. We have complied with that. Both the private TEC and city staff agree that there is not a negative traffic impact from this development. Let's talk housing. This is straight from the Norman AIM Committee. This is their work that I have taken to show the need that we have in this community. And up top, you can see we are currently going through a forward-looking plan. Where are we going to put residences and where are we going to put people just on a historic growth rate? And in 2030, we need 8,000 plus new housing units. By 2045, we'll need 14 additional. That puts in total, we need over 23,000. This is what we're going through right now as a community. We're talking about where do we put those? What do we need to do to have places and to match the supply and demand need that we currently face with housing. In order to reach that goal by 2045, we need to have 1,100 housing units in Norman. This math right here shows housing unit starts, residential starts by year. You can't see the years there, but it starts all the way in 2000. That red line would be the year that we have hit 1,100 units. We've done it 4 times. We have not really come close in the last 2-3 years. There's a housing need. Other communities talk about a housing crisis. I think the numbers start to show that in Norman as well. This is what PMA and the ownership group saw when they looked and wanted to develop the site. We do not need shopping centers. We need housing. That is the proposal, is to turn what is currently entitled at a very high dirt dollar amount, commercial dirt, downgrade it into the community need with 642 residential units. So conclusion, I can't say that enough. Obviously, that's not my work. That's not something I've done. That's just something I get to stand up here and say. But to the ownership group, it is a substantial downzoning. It is a commitment to open space that is impressive. As you can see green space, you can see trees throughout the site. And I wish I could have gotten a visible site plan of the allowed PUD, but there's not a tree shown. That is 1997, before we were talking about open space requirements to the extent that we do today, before we were talking about parking landscape to the extent that we do today. This is a project that goes through the process that you guys are typically used to seeing. We've talked landscape, we've talked open space, we've talked how do we preserve the natural topography to the extent and also add in a much-needed element to the community, which is not a huge retail, big box shopping center, but is instead residential units. And with that, finally, I'll just call out the preliminary plat. Staff report has this line that staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat for Bob Moore Farms North Planned Unit Development. Once again, the preliminary plat is the main part that would look at traffic impacts, stormwater impacts. We've gone through that process. We meet the city's adopted codes, and we have staff's recommendation of approval on all those aspects. With that, happy to take questions. We've got the full project team here. Greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you. Moving to questions for the applicant by commissioners. Commissioner
Thanks.
Jablonski.
I'll go first since the staff said that you all would be well positioned to answer that question about traffic. So I'll just to ask it again. So it looks like you have Willow Bend, and then the proposal is to extend a city street down to about the middle of Willow Bend, and then there's also a place where it looks like a parking area for the apartment complex connects to Willow Bend. And so my question is, how much traffic is that going to add? And to put it in context, right now it looks like a sleepy neighborhood. I drove around yesterday to have a look at it. By the way, I completely agree with you. We need more housing. That's a very real need. Adding higher density housing is a good thing. It makes sense. But of course, and I know the developer is sensitive to this because they already adjusted the plan some, you want to have some kind of buffer. And so I just want to have a complete picture of what this looks like, what's going to be the impact on the neighborhood so that I know what I'm voting for or against.
Absolutely. BJ, I'll have you talk through how you look at that and get your counts, but I do really want to make sure it's emphasized that right now it is sleepy, right now it is green. It's allowed to be substantially more intense. And those numbers are what you ran 15,000 cars a day versus what this plan generates is less than 6,000 cars a day. So the impact is less than what the impact could be under the current entitlements. But that doesn't talk about your count, so please.
Thank you, Commissioners. BJ Hawkins, Traffic Engineering Consultants. So we looked at a study on the whole site. We looked at all the access points along 36th. We looked at the intersections of Main and 36th, Main and Ed Noble Parkway, and the Norman Center Court driveway. And then it's kind of the Sam's driveway, some of the other ones as well. So what Gunner's alluding to, the development is anticipated to generate 5,000 vehicles per day. That's the entire site. There are 7 different access points. You've got 2 directly off 36th. You've got multiple ones off of that Norman Center Court. You've got some that go north directly up towards the Sam's development. So all of this traffic is not going to be going just on Willow Bend. I looked at the traffic projections. Looks like the entire development would add 400 vehicles per day to Willow Bend. It's going to be less than 20 cars during the AM peak hour and less than 50 in the PM peak hour. The additional connection on Norman Center Court that goes up and down, that would be responsible for about 250 cars a day added to Willow Bend.
Can I ask a follow-up question? There was a protest letter that was submitted, and they had said, they had asked the question in their letter, why don't you just cut this off and not connect why not, I forget what it's called, Norman Center or something? Why not cut it off so Norman Center doesn't connect to Willow Bend? What would that do if they didn't connect?
So typically, anytime you have a development like this, the city, everybody always encourages connectivity. So anytime you have that and you start cutting it off, you're encouraging wrong-way people having to do U-turns. More often than not, we see these things that, a neighborhood, a budding neighborhood might not say they use it, but that connectivity helps them get from there up to Main a lot quicker than having to sit at 36th and Willow Bend. What it would do as far as the total impacts, I'm not sure. We didn't look at that, but you'd be taking more traffic, obviously, from the, just to and from the north, as opposed to that 400, it'd be probably about 250 less cars a day on Willow Bend. But you'd still have some because you have the one access point for the apartment units there to the east.
Can you tell me roughly what the traffic is on Willow Bend? So if it adds 250, is it currently like 1,000 or is it like 50? You know what I mean? I want to be able to put 250 in context.
Sorry, I didn't have it right on the tip of my tongue. If you don't mind, let me, 500.
Thank you.
That's what I got.
Any other questions for the applicant by Commissioner Jablonski? Okay. Commissioner Parker is next, so I'm calling on him.
Okay, thank you. This isn't necessarily something, but geometric-wise, and BJ, this may be for you, the traffic circle, to the east side of that, I don't like that driveway on coming off of the traffic circle. I think that with that acute turning movement, you might have situations where somebody's coming through at one rate of speed. They can't see their taillights to be able to stop, make that, and I think that might be a point of impact. So I would like to see that be moved down and out of the traffic circle, and then potentially to access that area to the south there's another entrance that you have, just put it opposite of that. So just as a suggestion.
I'm not sure that these are by any means any sort of final plans. These are probably just schematics that I assume that can be adjusted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. like to put this one up because I think it's easier to see, but the preliminary plat will control that, and I was just trying to see, I think it might have a slightly modified approach there, and that's something to that detailed level, when we get to final plat stage, will be looked at for.
Okay.
Any other questions by Commissioner Parker for
Nope,
applicants?
I'm good.
Moving to Commissioner Brewer.
BJ, I had just a point of clarification. So you said there are 500 cars per day currently on Willow Bend, and it's projected to be 750 after the development? Is that the,
No, it would be, what did I say, 9. You are correct on the 500. So it'd be 900. It'd be
Okay.
adding 400 a day.
and what, I know this is a generalization, but just as a question, what is a typical connector street that goes into a neighborhood? What does that typically average on streets throughout Norman?
So a collector street would be 1,000, right? Is that the threshold, or is it typically? Ish.
Is Willow Bend
Around a-
considered a collector street?
It could be. A lot of times, it's just a straight street that obviously accesses a bunch of streets, you know, lower volume residential streets. As this curves all the way and provides access to those, it could be classified as a collector street. The city, you know, now, obviously, way before this, they have standards as far as the widths and you know, the right-of-way and everything that needs to be constructed. This is anywhere from a local street to a collector street. But as far as volumes, levels of service, it was analyzed existing, it's analyzed in the 2030, so projecting all the existing traffic up to 2030 and adding the site traffic, and it still operated with no issues, so.
Any other questions, Commissioner Brewer? I have some additional questions for clarification. I did ask Jane Hudson to maybe try to pull that prior plat for us, since I know they had that late as an additional slide. Could you clarify for me on the prior plat and in your TIA when you were doing your proposed projections, was there a connection from Norman Center Drive that connected to Willow Bend in that prior plat and in those projections for the existing traffic?
So my projections was just based on the acreage. I used a 20% floor area ratio, used that C2 zoning, so I just did a generic shopping center type zoning, and that's how I came up with the number that was the 15,000. So I didn't do it based on an actual existing site plan, although was there an actual site plan?
So Commissioner, that, as you know, one of the main reasons I went back and looked was to try and get that answer, and I can't tell. It's just such an old document, so we're trying to zoom in and see if there's a connection or not, but it's clear to see the site plan and the parking lots, but I couldn't tell the access points.
Thank you. And we may have clarification from Jane Hudson here shortly, depending on, it was a late request from us to find that, so. Other questions that I have, since Commissioner Brewer asked the question about a collector street, what's an average for a local street? Was the other alternative that it would be? Do we have like a general average number of cars for that by comparison?
I don't think there is an average per se. You could have a local street that serves 3 homes. You could have a local street winds through that could have 500, 800 vehicles per day. So the threshold, there isn't necessarily one. I think city uses, when you go over 1,000 cars, it becomes a collector. That's kind of more of the designation. And it's also kind of the way the street looks. You know, if it's more of a straight street, like I said, that accesses a lot of other side streets.
Thank you. And well, before you go, from the traffic impact report, one of the intersections that, I don't know if it would technically be an intersection, but it was the exit point along the multifamily to the east that connects down onto the newly proposed connection for Norman Center Court. So the piece that goes from the cul-de-sac, roundabout to Willow Bend Road. There's an exit from the more majority section of that multifamily there. And I was looking at your total proposed, and I am not a traffic engineer, and I very much appreciate that you have your professional services and what goes into that. But there was, on one of your it was figure 5D for point of reference. It proposed that coming out of that intersection, 92 cars in the morning, for example, 57 in the evening, would turn left, and 24 in the morning, 15 at night would turn right. Can you tell me a little bit about how you determined who would go left and who would go right? Because potentially, who made a right turn out of there would affect the Willow Bend and that traffic impact.
So ultimately, it's all about the destination, where you're coming from, where you're going to, leaving the site. The majority of these residents would be going to the north as opposed to going to the south on 36th. So that's why you're going to see a more of a majority turning left out of this, as opposed, or similarly, across from Creekdale is the other main entrance to this, the larger portion of the multifamily. You've only got 5 turning left, you got 38 going north. So when you get up to Main Street, obviously there's a lot more commercial, there's a lot more, access to I-35 and everything. So you're gonna have vehicles going north on 36, you're gonna have them going east on Main, potentially even west on Main. So that's more of a destination for these future residents as a whole than going south. I believe I took to the south 25%, so that means 75% is somewhere to the north, or I had like 5% going to Ed Noble. So
Yeah, I just, I guess this is more of a comment. I mean, we use a crystal ball, we use our engineering standards, which you have your licensing, and I can't not really speak to. But I also know that, I mean, in many cases, some people may choose not to go on the more heavy trafficked road, maybe choose neighborhood streets. A lot of people drive through neighborhood streets, especially around their homes. And so I wonder about potential for just a normal margin of error in those kind of projected numbers, how many people might actually end up on Willow Bend. If you have any kind of background on those margins that maybe could be helpful.
So similarly to what I was saying, the existing traffic on Willow Bend right now, 1 car turns left in the AM, 11 turn right. And the PM, 5 turn left, 13 go right. So that just shows that's the existing patterns right now for the residents. So the majority are gonna head to the north, up to Main, to I-35, to wherever, the mall. So
Yeah.
just kind of mimicking existing traffic patterns.
Yeah, fair point. Thank you. This may be not a traffic question, so whoever might be best poised for that. Something I noticed is that what is listed as Andal Avenue is a private road versus a public road. Some things that stood out to me is in the designing, it appeared to have some bump outs, as we've been seeing in some of our other city designs, things that might have what otherwise might be considered a street diet approach. Also that the width of the road kind of on the in-turn from 36 was maybe a little bit more narrow compared to Willow Bend. And I'm curious about those design choices, and partly because, again, as what route somebody chooses, a road that has a street diet approach to it may be less traveled than a wider existing, less street dieted road. So maybe we can address the Andal Avenue and those thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if the cursor shows up. I don't think it does, just on this laptop, but it's the road that is basically the line of demarcation from the commercial development area 1 to development area 2 to the south. Right now on the preliminary plat, you can see it listed as common area C, and exactly right. The reason it's shown as common area C is that is a private road, privately maintained, private drive. Right now, the desire for that is really flexibility. Like we've talked about in other projects, if it's privately maintained, you have allowances for maybe different standards, whether that's a smaller street, larger street, on-street parking, additional parking areas. That currently the design shows parking on that, and so that's one of the main factors why it's private, not public. It also could be at final plat stage done in a manner to where it meets public standards. And so when you actually get the final plat document ready for council acceptance and filing. If the desire then at that time is for it to be public and it's built to city standards, then it's possible it could be publicly done. But the current plan is for it to be a private drive with on-street parking. It allows whatever end user there to shut it down and control access. It's right next to the commercial street, so you could envision that it could be shut down and have festivals. It could be shut down and be overflow vendor parking. So just flexibility in the programming of the retail development.
Thank you. While you're still up there, can we tell me a little bit further about the height change? I do think with the addition of the width of Willow Bend and with a 10-foot setback, the height of these blue, still at 3 stories. Maybe you can speak to a little bit what is a story by code in height regulations. Maybe if there are any initial intents of what that actually will look like or any other insight, just looking at 3 stories of height still across from single family, maybe something to ease some concerns in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. So the plan all along was 6 stories, as dense as possible, because when they looked at the programming, like we've walked through, the need in the community is multifamily. And so the plan was to have, the allowance to go tall and pack in residences. In hearing the feedback from pre-development, it's something that the change was made by the ownership group to go down in that concession. And so right now, those blue buildings are shown at 3 stories. They feel like that's a good buffer because R1, single family, is allowed to go to 2. And so you cross the street, you just get 1 additional height. You can't have the 6-story now staring down at a possible 2-story. So it's just a minor step up. But it's a major concession when you look at the 6 stories down to 3, right? So they've cut that project in half. In Norman, I apologize, I don't know the number, but code does have a maximum height. Jane, you might have it, or somebody else, but I think right now the programming idea is somewhere in the range of maybe 2.5 to 3 stories by that code number, so whatever that fluctuation would be. But that's kind of market-driven with the characteristics that are today. And so right now, Norman might not have the market to justify full 3-story on that. Maybe it only justifies 2-story. When this is actually built out over time and conditions change, it might be able to get more rents. It might be able to be a 3-story product. And so the concession down to 6 to 3 was substantial, but I think that is where they want to land with the ability to get to 3 stories on that row.
Thank you. I think that was all my questions for the applicant. Were there any other questions by commission for the applicant? Seeing none, I believe we may have that prior PUD. Were we able to determine? I might have to turn your mic on.
Is it on? So I went back to look for the PUD, for the ordinance number that you gave me, and actually, there were 2 pieces. One was a straight zoning, and it was this PUD. I can't get access to the straight zoning. The city clerk's office is closed, so it would not be a fair comparison, and I don't want to have that compared to what's up tonight.
Thank you. So just to confirm on that, then that means we are not able to determine at this point right now if there was previously in the PUD for sure an access point, like along the lines where Norman Center Court extension is proposed. So,
Correct.
thank you. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I will move to audience comments. So I will call everybody up. Just a reminder, if you will please say your name and address first. And then if you would like a 30-second warning, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to yield 3 minutes for you. And at the end of your 3 minutes, thank you for your comments. Starting with Dennis Hooper.
Hello, Dennis Hooper, 3305 Windjammer. Thank you for opportunity to speak tonight, and I want to ask some questions as well. The first question I want to ask is, did they not know how it was zoned when they bought it? I'm sure they're intelligent people, but it was zoned a certain way. And when we bought our houses, one of the things that was not considered tonight was the effect it's going to have on our neighborhoods. We have very nice, quiet, well-kept neighborhoods. And when we bought those property, that property was zoned a certain way. And now they're trying to downgrade the zone to multi-housing. My next question is, the problem with traffic is not Willow Bend, it's 36th Street. I try to turn off on 36th Street, and that's the problem, especially in the morning with school buses. Then my final question is, or my final observation is, that's a huge apartment complex. And the green space and all that they're talking about, that's just collection ponds. But my question is, if you bought a house in a nice neighborhood, would you want that built across the street from you? And I don't think you would. How is it going to affect our property and our way of life? I think it's going to be, that street that leads over to the library there is right in front of my house. And people's going to cut through there. Of course they are. And so I'm going to ask you to decline the rezoning. I think it's unfair. I think they knew what they were getting when they bought it. I'm sure they're smart people. And I'm going to ask you to decline it.
Thank you. Boris Apasov. I am so sorry.
So my name is Boris Apanasov, and I came to Norman.
Just if you'll say your address for the record.
This is 412 Prestwick,
Thank you.
Norman, Oklahoma 73072.
Thank you.
And this is Willow Bend Homeowners Association. I built a house in this neighborhood 26 years ago, and I'm at Norman already 33 years, more than 33 years. I came as a full professor at OU. And I completely support what the previous Dennis Cooper was saying about investment into housing, nice housing, and then across the street you have high-density apartments. But I would like to talk about different stuff. So you have my printouts for our neighborhood, and actually two neighborhoods, concerns and objections to rezoning proposal. So when it came to inform us, we received a letter from City of Norman on June 17. I received it, and immediately we started to contact Bob Moore Farms and Black Oak Development. And finally, nicely, they were able, with D. Greninger, to organize such a meeting. And we raised our concerns on that meeting. And looked to me that at that point, developers wanted to talk about this road which is supposed to join this area of high density to Willow Bend Road and to create huge traffic. So what I heard today, it is absolutely fantastic numbers, like 250 additional cars on the road. That's unbelievable, because it's going to be more than 2,000 additional cars. And you may compare it to existed our neighborhood. It has 70 houses, and this is mostly elderly population, which drive very rare. So in that way, the traffic will be increasing in tens times, not like 250 cars per day. That's absolutely unbelievable numbers. Whatever they get it, like a professional making all this looking real, it's not real. And it's going to be a big concern on safety. As on 27 June meeting in the City Planning Commission representing this plan, many people were talking that they walk on this road frequently with little children, with dogs, and
I'm
so
so
on.
sorry. Thank you very much for your comments.
Okay. I hope you decline this proposal.
Thank you. Moving to Paul and Rita Owen, if you guys are speaking separately, just whoever wants to come first, and then the next person. And then again, just name and address to start, please.
Paul Owen, 3204 Riverwalk Drive. I've got a feeling that if this goes through, that Riverwalk Drive to the south, now you say it's not going to extend past Willow Bend where the dead end is right now? Sorry?
These would be questions or comments for commission.
Okay. But Riverwalk Drive, where Willow Bend dead ends on Scotts Bluff, we have another exit. Riverwalk Drive can go out 236. Scotts Bluff goes into Riverwalk Drive to 36. What's that going to do? Because you have a lot of children in that area too. What's that going to do when somebody has an accident on Willow Bend? They're going to send that traffic down to Riverwalk. And, I hope y'all decline this thing, because if you'd ask my wife, she'd rather had a shopping center and a bunch of apartments. And I'm being honest with you, because when I bought that property, I darn sure didn't want no apartments across the street. I lived in Houston, Texas, in an apartment, and it was heck getting in, heck getting out. And y'all only got two ways getting back to 36, Willow Bend and Riverwalk Drive. So I'm hoping to decline it. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. And did Rita Owen also want to speak? Okay, thank you. Next is Don Brackage. Thank you, will do.
I'm Don Brackage, 3201 Scotts Bluff. I'm a retired police officer and a retired supervisor from a hospital. I want to get on to the traffic counts. This guy's learned, got a degree. I do it real life as a police officer. I was a traffic officer. He's saying 500 cars a day. You multiply that times 3, because you got people that's going to come visits, deliveries, everything else. He doesn't take that in consideration. And the attorney said 5,000 cars a day for the apartment complex. Well, that's going to be all day long. Those cars can go in and out, where a shopping center is just a certain amount of time, and then it's shut down. The city never take consideration the crime rate that's going to go up there. That's the last thing that's ever put in place that's taken care of. The crime will go up. We'll have to deal with it. We'll have stuff stolen. And there's no way, they're talking about building those 5 complexes down there on the south. You're not going to have enough parking. Willow Bend will become a parking lot. Another deal about the house values. I built my house 2 years ago there. Beautiful neighborhood. I'm from the country. I decided to go back to the country. I put my house on the market 1 month before this came out in the newspaper. We had an open house right after it came out. Everybody that came loved the house. Said, we're not going to buy it because of the apartment complex. So our value's already gone down. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it. Mr. Joyce, the attorney, as soon as I got my letter, I called him, asked him how far this is going to go. He told me it's stopping at the electric lines. It's supposed to be just south. That's all they're going to rezone at the meeting we had. He stated that again. Now, all of a sudden, we're rezoning all the way down on the side. Why is the statement false to me? That's how I take it, because it's not correct, because they're doing more rezoning. I just really want you all to deny it, because they're not being truthful. It's going to hurt everybody in that small neighborhood. I mean, most are elderly, retired. I'm retired. I love the neighborhood.
30 seconds.
Okay, that's all I have to say. I just want you to, consider what's been said. Because the statistics this guy gives, that's all it is, statistics. You can name it any way you want. Statistics are just that. I dealt with real life, and I'm telling you, his numbers are way off. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Moving to Tabor Halford.
Hello, Tabor Halford, 515 Miller Avenue. It sounds like, you guys are aware, I think all you guys are probably aware there's traffic issues. Some of the things I was going to point out is coming onto Ed Noble Parkway up there. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to cross that 4-lane right there at that intersection. That is almost impossible in a traffic hazard to take a left on there. So all the traffic would, it would be easiest to go right, but no one wants to go right. So I think that is not going to be necessarily a destination for people. I think they're going to jump down to Willow Bend or the other. Some of the other issues is down when Willow Bend hits 36, just south of there, there's a big hill. So my father-in-law and mother-in-law, they live in that area, and we go there probably once a week or so. And there's been multiple times that cars fly over that hill. And so I think the increased traffic issue there, and there's also, the map doesn't really show it, but across the other end is the dump out for that entire neighborhood. There's kind of a backside, but that's where that neighborhood comes off right there. So I think that's a big issue. I think that people aren't going to take that north route. I think that they're going to take the south route, and you're going to have a lot of issues. Taking a left there, coming up that hill is going to be a big problem. So, I'm not in favor of it, primarily because they're not in favor of it. I don't think anyone is, but I think that, some way to mitigate the traffic issues would be some way to redesign the road to where when it comes out on 36, if most of the people are going north, why not have a central lane and a right turn only lane where you can dump onto the 2-lane going 36 north and then hit the 3-lane on Main Street. So you have a constant flow of traffic rather than diverting down to this road where it's more challenging to take a left. And I think that you're just trying to use these feeder streets to accommodate all this, where you really need a bigger redesign of the traffic issues here. So that was some of the things. They say a community-friendly plan. You've had some people on Willow Bend speak out about it. I don't know what's been proposed. It's kind of my first time listening to this, but a big wall along Willow Bend, along those 2-story apartments would help mitigate some of the issues. But I think the dump out right there, most of the people are going to come down to Willow Bend because it's less used and it's going to be way more frequent than what is there currently. So the only other thing is the 26% down to 10% potential of open space. I don't know. That's a massive change with the amount of acreage that they have. So I don't know what the rules are with you guys, but it seems like that would be something to look into. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard McCowan. Do you want the warning?
Why not? I've got my timer here, though. Richard McCowan, 4409 Cannon Drive. I'm here this evening in my capacity as the chair of the Housing Subcommittee for the AIM-Norman Comprehensive Land Use Plan Update. And let me run you through the numbers really quick. So in 2022, Norman only built 417 single-family houses. In 2023, we only built 330 single-family houses, and this year, we're going to build even less. So we don't have the land or the infrastructure to continue to build single-family detached homes. We just don't. But for this comprehensive plan, if you take that 417 number, which is the average that we've been hitting over the last decade, and you project it forward over the next 25 years, that gets you 10,500 housing units. We've dialed down our growth rate. Our historic growth rate is 1.68% over the last 20 years. We're reducing that. We're projecting forward a 1.5% growth rate. And we have to. It's a federal requirement. We're the third largest city in the state. So as we look at that, we have to accommodate 23,000 housing units. 10,500 single family, which we aren't going to achieve. And that leaves us short 12,500. Now, translate that into real numbers. That's 41.6 300-unit apartment complexes. So our job as a housing subcommittee is trying to figure out where are they going to go. We're building a map. You guys are going to see it later this fall. And on this map, we're trying to find 41 300-unit housing complexes. We put way more apartments than is currently shown on this plan at this site. It's one of the most logical sites to put multifamily. The mall needs it. Indoor malls are dying all over America. Ours is hanging on by a thread. This is an incredible shot in the arm to all of the retail along Ed Noble Parkway. Today, apartment dwellers are renters by choice. And you're going to find that it's the children and grandchildren and relatives of people who live in this
30
area
seconds.
Are going to be the residents here. 50.2% of the adults over the age of 18 are not married. It's lonely to live in an isolated suburban single-family detached neighborhood. This is going to be a great project, a great addition to Norman. I hope you support it. I think it's a great project, and we need it to meet our housing objectives. I'm out of time.
Thank you. Are there any other audience comments from anyone we did not already call on? Okay. If you'd like to come up and then just state your name and address. And again, let me know if you'd like the 30-second warning.
I better take that warning. Good evening, everyone. My name is Weston White, and my wife Valerie and I live at 708 Scotts Bluff. I appreciate Mr. McCowan and the City of Norman's dilemma when it comes to housing, and certainly that's something that must be addressed going forward. However, I hope that the commission here would appreciate how this is the wrong way to go about it. If this was 200 to 300 apartment units, as proposed by Mr. Cowan, 41 different locations, I could almost stomach it as the residents there. But the thought of six-story building apartment complexes at this site on the west side of Norman is absurd. If you would for a moment, close your eyes and think about the west side of I-35. Where is there a building that's 6 stories? The old Holiday Inn hotel/eyesore? That's it. There is nothing else west of I-35. This will change the view of the west side of Norman as people come into Norman. At 6 stories, depending on what the code says, we're looking at 60 to 70 feet tall buildings that will look down across all of the neighborhood. I live not on Willow Bend, pretty far away from it. That's the wrong plan for this space. And for that reason alone, I'd ask the commission to reject it. With regard to connectivity, the residents who are already here do not want it. Okay, we don't want to cut through, just as a friend pointed out. To try and navigate, negotiate at Noble Parkway is a nightmare as it is. We'll take 36th to Main. We do not want the connectivity. And that connectivity from the traffic circle to Willow Bend is one of the major problems with the plan as proposed by the developers. To cut that off would go a long way to placating the residents' concerns who already live in Willow Bend and included Shadow Ridge too. They're not given notice of this because they're not within 350 feet, but there's an entire another neighborhood that will be impacted as traffic is rerouted and run down Riverwalk Drive. Mr. Joyce points out a lot of green space. I appreciate that, Shirley. That is so much concrete and so many people for what little green space. The map is pretty, right? The rendering, sure. But we all know and have been in apartment complexes, that's not how it looks. Apartment complexes are not maintained like residential homes. That's something
30
that
seconds.
needs to be taken into account, as hopefully the commissioner will reject this plan. 5,000 vehicles is crazy. 400 additional vehicles on Willow Bend will double the traffic on that, where almost all of the residents, if they do get out, senior citizens and families with small children, utilize Willow Bend because it is a low-traffic street. Again, cutting off that access would be helpful. Go tall and pack in residences was the term used by the developer's representative.
Thank you.
Do you want them packed in around you?
Are there any additional audience comments from anyone we did not already call on? Seeing none, I would move to Planning Commission discussion. And if there are additional questions for the applicant or staff for this, I'm going to go ahead and turn all the mics on. Any additional discussion by commissioners?
Sure, I have some things to say. I think this is a bit of a challenge. There's a very real need in Norman. The housing need is very real. We have to build more housing, that's clear. And it's going to be hard when, we're trying to fill in the city. We're going to have to increase density. That's very real. So the question is, how do we do it? I think the concerns we've heard are legitimate, that people bought a neighborhood on the other side of the street. It was planned to be residential and then commercial. And so I really feel for the guy who built his house most recently, and it feels like a bait and switch. I understand that. I don't think we're going to be able to get away from building, higher density. And so we have to do it in the best possible way. And we have to balance not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. But in this case, my concerns with the traffic are so great that it's hard for me to support the project. The traffic on Willow Bend is going to double from 500 to 900, if I understood correctly. But then as we heard more, I got even more concerned. So the east-west road that's going to be a private road is private. And if it's not designed in a way that's attractive, people are going to avoid that, and they're going to go down to Willow Bend and use it more. So as it is, it's hard for me to support, if that east-west road that's in the north were attractive to residents, and they wanted to use that over Willow Bend, it'd be easier to support. If I think it's called Norman Center or something, that road didn't come down and connect to Willow Bend, it'd be easier to support. Basically, for me, it's can we keep the neighborhood sleepy while increasing the density of the development just north of this neighborhood? And I think you can. I think it can be done, but it's not being done with this project. And so, I want to listen to my fellow commissioners, but right now it's, in its current form, hard to support, but with really small tweaks where the neighborhood could stay, a little bit more quiet, it'd be easy to support the project.
Before we have the applicant back, were there any other Planning Commission discussions or specific questions that were posed?
I'll just make a couple comments on the specific to the connection with Norman Center and Willow Bend. I do understand the concern with the connection there. I think that there was a point well made that there, I think it was referred to as turning left onto Ed Novo Parkway is difficult to do. My concern with cutting that off is that then it funnels all of these residents within these apartment complexes to that east-west corridor because, again, nobody wants to turn left onto Ed Novo Parkway. And the design of that street does not look like it can handle the increased density that would just funnel up and down east-west and then would spill out onto 36th. So I do think that that connection is necessary to make this work. And I think that it, effectively splits the traffic as an option, which is important to do in any development, especially with high density, that you need to spread that out. I was also, I can't speak to living in the neighborhood, and so I appreciated the comments about people walking up and down Willow Bend. Just from my observation, I would have more concern if there was already not a barrier on Willow Bend. Willow Bend, the neighborhood, there is a pretty substantial fence, almost wall, that goes down that edge right there that is already acting as a buffer. There's not an open space between a house and a backyard or a side yard and the street itself. And so that's existing. That doesn't even need to be built. And that was part of my question with the collector street versus a local street. It feels as though Willow Bend is more of a collector street, and the collector street is meant to collect cars and take them to access points in different areas. And given that that existing fence is there, that is on the edge of the neighborhood, it feels appropriate that this is more of a collector street as opposed to a local street. So those are my only comments, just kind of specific to that little connection right there.
I guess I have a couple things. Am I on?
You should be.
Okay. Just a couple of comments to make. I understand as a homeowner your concerns about multifamily going in north of you. I think that change is hard, especially when you can't see exactly what it's going to look like. But I do think that we have a housing situation in Norman, and we do need to look at density as solving some of those issues. So I commend you for doing the step down from 6 stories to 3 as a concession, and I think that's a good move. I also want to commend you on the amount of open space. I realize the PUD allows you to go down to 10%. I would encourage you not to take it down. I live in a neighborhood where we use our retention ponds, which is what these are, as amenities. They are surrounded by sidewalks, which we use as walking trails, and they get a lot of use. I think some of the activity using Willow Bend as a walking area, I think that's great for now. I also think that can switch to using the walking trails and taking advantage of the nature that's there. So I do want to say, I think that is great. I also like the fact that there are small open spaces throughout the community where if someone, and I do think we have to consider that renting now is a choice. It's sometimes necessitated by the fact that single-family housing is very hard to obtain. It's a lot of times not affordable for the average person. And so renting sometimes is a choice, sometimes it's a necessity. These are going to be Class A apartments. They're nice. But if you are someone with a child living in those apartments, having open space right outside where you can, there are numerous studies that tout the benefits of living next to green space and nature. And I think wherever you can get that in is great. And so I appreciate the thought given to that in this design. I know change is scary, but I think that sometimes we have to embrace it and trust that the outcome will be better than we anticipate.
Any other commissioners? You're already on.
I'm on, great. I have a couple of concerns about the private road, if there's going to be on-street parking, one of the things I might suggest is to make it very wide so that you can have parking on both sides of the street if need be, but have plenty of wide for 12-foot lanes as a thoroughfare, just as a suggestion. And to possibly address the concerns of the traffic on Willow Bend, I'm looking at the preliminary plat, and I don't, and it may be difficult to design this, but to not have access to Willow Bend at all from the road from whatever that road, Central, anyway, widen it. Block off Willow Bend so there's no access at all. And all the traffic goes to the private road and then back to Ed Noble Parkway as a possibility. And to the concern about residential and the dire need, I chaired the committee on city council when I was on council to look at the possibility of high-density development in Norman, and 6 stories and up, and in areas that would provide some walkability not only to downtown but to campus. And while I can appreciate the concerns of the residences, if we could eliminate the access to Willow Bend and the traffic concerns, that might assuage some of their concerns. But I think it's the crying need for quality, high-density residential is obviously, Mr. McCown's numbers were frightening, frankly. I intend to support this, and I think the modification suggested might relieve some of the concerns of the neighbors. One other thought is the apartments that are closest to the neighbors, those 3-story buildings, maybe there are no balconies or anything that would overlook the properties on the south of those buildings and make sure that's just east and west. I know apartment complex that we approved at Tecumseh and 36th, that was one of the design requirements. Those apartments don't look out into the neighborhood, they look north and south. And that eased a lot of the concerns of the neighbors when those 4-story apartments were built. So something to think about. And also signalization at 36th and whatever that private road is would ease some of the traffic concerns and make it easier to get on and off 36th at high traffic times. So food for thought.
Thank you. I have some additional questions and comments if there's no other commissioner comments. So I'm going to ask the applicant to come up for maybe some additional questions here. There was, one of the audience comments addressed parking on Willow Bend, and can you address if you know if parking is allowed currently on Willow Bend currently?
I don't believe so. David, do you know?
So we've had this come up before in other conversations for other streets and other neighborhoods about how to limit parking on one side of a street, for example, because I think that was a concern I had not thought of until the audience member brought that up. If somebody could park on Willow Bend to get quicker access to their apartment, that might be a motivation. So in the past, from my understanding, it could be requested from the city to have signage put up for parking on no parking on one side of a road, for example. And that might be one way to address that concern. Also, possibly walls and fencing. I think that was another comment that was brought up as a possible way to maybe discourage parking there that would maybe facilitate that multifamily quite as easily. Open to any additional thoughts you have on the concerns for parking on Willow Bend, because I had not thought of that prior to this meeting.
I think it's something I don't think we've thought about either. Happy to have that as a recommendation moving forward, that we look further into options there to reduce it.
Thank you. Could you speak a little bit? It came up on a few comments about the 26 to 10% minimum. Tell me about why a 10% minimum was put into your PUD document at all, if the intent's for 26.
Happy to, and I apologize. I'll make sure it doesn't happen in the future. I think it's a leftover from our form document. The 10% number is just the PUD standard. You can't have a PUD that has anything less than 10%. You are allowed to fluctuate, and it's in every PUD we have, to the extent that administrative changes can happen. So we would not like to have anything greater than what's allowed in the administrative changes. And so we're happy to strike that line, which then would say that it's its preliminary plan is 26% open space, and it's still subject to, I think it's section 36509, which is the PUD administrative changes. All that language is already in the PUD, and it's in all the ones that we bring in front of you, so that 10% number is always been kind of meaningless. I apologize for the oversight on my behalf.
Thank you. I think that would be very meaningful for addressing some concerns if that was an option. Can you tell me, is a turn lane striping proposed for Willow Bend related to this? Okay, okay. Yeah. Or if that might be something that could be considered as a fairly low cost-effective way to maybe assist with traffic flow. If you have any thoughts on that, BJ, maybe to address, if compared to adding a signal, significantly different to add some painted lines.
So we did look at signalization. I know the city has looked into, in the past, whether a signal is warranted at that intersection. It is not. The city's looked into, I also ran warrants based on 2024 traffic, still not warranted. So while no improvements were required, we could look into the ways to help that.
Yeah, thank you. I think that was all of my additional questions. I'm going to save everyone's time because I agreed with many points that many of the commissioners made. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
David Reese, I'm transportation engineer. I just wanted to clarify the comment about restricting parking on Willow Bend. That's not something that the developer could do. That's the way we restrict parking. Most commonly, it's a citizen-driven petition. If anybody wants to contact me, I can hook them up with who they would need to get to sign the petition. Requires 60% approval. If they can achieve that, we can install no parking signs. But it couldn't be done by the developer.
If the developer was a citizen that owned 50% of the abutting road, could they potentially qualify as 50% of that 60%?
No, because it's one owner.
Okay, it's by 60% of ownership. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I've got a quick comment before we close out. I don't want to miss a potential opportunity there, but I think most everybody in Norman knows that the area along Ed Noble Parkway over the years has dwindled, especially with the University North Park. I'm looking at the aerial, and I feel like there's potential to come off that traffic circle and do a bridge or some kind of structure over that detention pond and hook that back into Ed Noble Parkway. And I'm just wondering if something like that would help alleviate some of these traffic concerns. It would revitalize the Ed Noble Parkway area with that much housing, with easy access to that area and restaurants and more development potentially for mixed-use stuff. I would just maybe ask the developer to, leave that open as an option. So, that's my comments.
Thank you. Again, something I would not have thought of, so I appreciate the added input. I do like to say nice things also, so I wanted to take a moment to also appreciate 642 units for a moment, without completely reiterating what other people said. Something I've also brought up at other meetings is the idea of off-site amenities, and I didn't hear anybody else discuss the proximity to the library, and I have brought this up in other examples for projects near the health club and Ruby Grant and the since I know open space, the green space was very nice. And there are on-site, I saw a dog park, which we don't see very many of those, walking trails, some of these other, it was potentially pickleball came up at pre-development. There's plenty of things there, but also the off-site with having proximity to a library that you could walk to. And even though it is a big box store, not being on a food island, that you could walk to a grocery store. So for quality of life for people living here, I think that there's some good opportunities this particular location has. May not be favorable for all the residents, but I do also think that this location does make sense for multifamily use. There are apartments across the street. This does seem like a logical place, and how rare is it that we don't have to cut down trees, and we're not talking about trees at these meetings. It's not very often, and we will actually have a net improvement on trees because of this, and we talk about trees a lot, so I just want to mention that. I also really appreciated the improvement to stormwater. Normally you hear us asking a lot of questions about stormwater, but bringing current conditions and making improvements to stormwater, adding an intensity buffer, these are all things that I see as really strong positives to this project and the need for housing. I have still some reserved concerns about the height on that 3-story, but my main concern is still going to be that traffic on Willow Bend. I don't believe that it would be practical, without speaking on behalf of city staff, to completely close that out without any other access to Willow Bend to those multifamily units. But a less dense ingress-egress point, potentially like what Andal has to the same multifamily, I think could be another way to give a little bit of relief for those couple of cars that are projected without having that major connective street in there. And speaking, I can't speak for everybody or against any data that's been presented, and I certainly appreciate that. I would turn right. I would not turn left because I would not cross 4 lanes of traffic. I would go an easier route off of 36 if I was the person in that complex leaving and I was trying to get to the highway. Also because getting out to 36, you also have another way to hit the highway by going down the 36 connection to Lindsay. So I do think that some of those predictions, I think it will be a larger number of cars, and appreciated having a former representative that could speak a little bit to more applicable traffic, because, delivery drivers, that's another thing I probably would not have thought about without that comment. So thank you for everyone who came and made those comments. I would like to support this project. I see many, many positives in here, and I really appreciated the comment that perfect can't be the enemy of good. I like these houses, but I hope that this project could have some small revisions that could maybe continue to make it push forward in a way that is a little bit more amicable to those considerations, and having a little bit more of accommodation as mentioned here. As is with that connection, I believe I would need to decline to vote yes on this because of that. I don't think that this exact connection street, the long-term impact and what potentially could happen as Willow Bend further down continues to develop, I can't support it as is, but it was very close for me. And there's so many positives that I hope also are conveyed in this. And I hope that from this, that City Council can take this and make a good choice for the city of Norman.
I'm going to make one additional comment just to kind of piggyback off the thought from Commissioner Parker and discussion and comments from neighbors about turning left on Edna Parkway. This is nothing that I don't believe that we could require from the developer, but just urge city staff to take a hard look at that intersection of Edna Parkway, because I do think that we're going to be adding density, and there will be additional density that's added to the south, and that's going to be a key intersection for traffic flow, because I do agree that we don't want that to be a non-choice for somebody, automatically say, I'm never going north right there. That needs to be an option in kind of the name of connectivity. That needs to be a viable option that somebody could take a left there. So This is just something to point out for the future, that seems like a very key intersection that we need to take a hard look at.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion by commission? And if not, I would take a motion, and everyone's mics are on.
I make a motion to approve.
And a vote.
You may vote. All votes have been cast, and it passes 5-2.
Thank you. Moving to our next non-consent items, items number 7, 8, and 9. And note, the applicant has requested postponement to October 10th, 2024 Planning Commission for the meeting for these items. Item number 7, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of Resolution R-2324-76, a resolution of the Council of the City of Norman, Oklahoma, amending the Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan so as to remove part of the southwest quarter of Section 8, Township 8 North, Range 2 West of the Indian Meridian, Cleveland County, Oklahoma, from the industrial designation and place the same in the mixed-use designation, and change approximately 11.5 acres from future urban service area to current urban service area, southeast corner of Highway 9 and Jenkins Avenue. Item number 8, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of Ordinance O-2324-28, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Norman, Oklahoma, amending Section 36-201 of the Code of the City of Norman, Oklahoma, amending Section 36-201 of the Code of the City of Norman so as to remove part of the southwest corner of Section 8, Township 8 North, Range 2 West of the Indian Meridian to Norman, Cleveland County, Oklahoma, from the I-1 Light Industrial District and place the same in the PUD Planned Unit Development District and providing for the severability thereof, southeast corner of Highway 9 and Jenkins Avenue. And item number 9, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of PP-2324-10, consideration of a preliminary plat submitted by Highway 9 Jenkins M&J Investments LLC, Craft and Toll, for Sooner Village, a planned unit development for 56.54 acres of property generally located at the southeast corner of Highway 9 and Jenkins Avenue. Again, the applicant has requested postponement to the October 10th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. I have all microphones on. Again, the applicant has requested postponement to the October 10th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. Is there any discussion, or would the commissioner like to make a motion regarding that item?
I make a motion to postpone the items to the October 10th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
And I second it.
And a vote?
You may vote. All votes have been cast, and it carries 7-0.
Thank you. Moving to miscellaneous discussion, does staff have any information for the commission? Seeing none, do the commissioners have any additional comments they would like to make? Microphones are on if so. Okay. Seeing none, I would declare the meeting adjourned if there's nothing else to come before the commission.